Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Safitri. I am an economic education student, class of 2020. The Honorable Mr. Safarudin Mukhtar, MSc, as the first supervisor, and the Honorable Mr. Dr. Karunia Nadianta, SCPME, as a second supervisor. In this video, I will present the research I have conducted. Well, the title of the research is The Effect of Economic Growth, Provincial Minimum Wage, and Investment on Labor Observation in DKI Jakarta Province 2022. First is research background. The employment problem in Indonesia is not just a limit opportunity or employment opportunity and low productivity. The increase in unemployment rate is caused by limit demand for work, which is then associated with other external factors, including a decline in the balance of payment, an increase in foreign debt, and other policies that result in decline economic growth, a decline in wage, investment, and a decline in employment opportunity. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has hit all countries in the world, including Indonesia, has caused a decline in various sectors, one of the biggest being the economic sector. The policy issued by the government to suppress the growth of COVID-19 have actually caused a reduction in the amount of household consumption due to the decline in income and consumption of non-profit institutions that serve consuming households, both of which has a big impact on gross domestic product or GDP, will also reduce investment. DKI Jakarta Province is one of the large provinces with a quite large population. DKI Jakarta Province has several leading sectors which generate regional income. The economic growth of DKI Jakarta Province in 2019 was relatively higher than the previous year, namely 2018, amount to 1 billion rupiah at constant prices. However, due to COVID, which hit in Indonesia in 2020, it caused a decline in the economic growth of DKI Jakarta province, namely 1 billion rupiah. The implementation of minimum wage in DKI Jakarta is adjust to the decent living needs in DKI Jakarta. The increasing need for living every year encouraged the government to update policy regarding minimum wage so that workers can live a decent and prosperous life. Increasing wage will also increasing public consumption and investment, which will ultimately increasing economic growth. However, in cases where the wage level will influence the supply of labor and the higher the wage will increase the supply of labor. Investment is a necessary element in economic growth. Investment entering an area will increase capital for economic activity. This additional capital can encourage regional economic growth. If investment continues to enter an area, this will increase the capital stock. An increased capital stock will increase people's ability to carry out production activities, which is in production process require labor. Increasing investment is also driven by increasing people income. Based on employment data for DKI Jakarta Province in 2018 until 2022, the number of workforce in DKI Jakarta Province by city fluctuates every year. The fluctuating number of the workforce is a big problem because not all of the workforce can enter the world of work. Due to limited job opportunities, the population continued to increase every year without being accompanied by an increase in the number of jobs. So that employment in DKI Jakarta province must be taken into account because economic growth is closely related to the availability of jobs that are sufficient to balance the number of job seekers who will enter the job market. Efforts can be made to reduce the number of employment by improving the performance of region leading sectors. Research question. The first one is, how does economic growth affect labor observation in DKI Jakarta province? Yeah, number two is, how does the provincial minimum wage affect labor observation in DKI Jakarta province? And the third one is, how does investment affect labor observation in the Jakarta province. And the last is, how does the COVID-19 pandemic affect labor observation? Research purposes. First is to determine the effect of economic growth on labor observation in DKI Jakarta province in 2018 until 2022. The second is to determine the effect of provincial or city minimum wage on the labor observation in DKI Jakarta province in 2018 until 2022. The third one is to determine the effect of investment on labor observation in DKI Jakarta province in 2018 until 2022. And the last one is to determine the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on labor observation in DKI Jakarta province in 2018 until 2022. Benefit of research. The first one is for government. As advice and input for the Indonesian government, especially the DKI Jakarta provincial government, in designing policy related to economic growth, minimum wage, investment, and employment. And then providing information and knowledge to public regarding economic growth, minimum wage, investment, and labor observation in DKI Jakarta province. And the last one is for researcher is an additional insight, experience, and education, including research, economic growth, minimum wage, investment, and labor observation. Let's rather review absorption of labor. The first one is labor demand theory, labor supply theory, and labor market equilibrium. Economic growth is classical and neoclassical economic theory, Keynesian theory, economic growth factor, component of economic growth, and economic growth on labor observation. Provincial minimum wage is wage theory, wage components, and minimum wage on labor observation. Investment is types of the wage in form of capital investment, investment and capital investment function, Haruk-Domar investment theory, and the last one, investment in labor observation. Previous research is from Sabihi, Kumenaung, and Miot from 2021. The coefficient of determination, or R quadrat, is 0.905. This means that the influence of economic growth, investment, and the provincial minimum wage on labor observation in south of Sulawesi from 2002 to 2017 was 19.5%. In the remaining 9.5% was influenced by other factors not included the model regression. Theoretical framework. The first one is economic growth has effect to labor observation, provincial minimum wage as the positive effect to labor observation, investment is have positive effect to labor observation, and the COVID-19 pandemic have a positive effect to labor observation. Research hypothesis is economic growth has a positive influence on labor observation on DKI Jakarta. Minimum wage has a positive influence on labor observation on DKI Jakarta. The COVID-19 pandemic has insignificant effect on labor observation in DKI Jakarta. Research method, unit of analysis, population, and sample. This research used secondary data in the form of panel data. In this research, the panel data used in 5 years from 2018 until 2022. The data source for this research was obtained from the DKI Jakarta Provincial Central Statistic Agency. The data used in this research concern economic growth, minimum wage, and investment in DKI Jakarta Province for 2018 until 2022. Data collection technique. Data collection to support this research was obtained from the DKI Jakarta Central Agency through literature study and documentation by collecting, recording the data obtained. The data in question is data that contains information related to this research, namely the level of economic growth, minimum wage, investment, and labor observation in DKI Jakarta province in the period 2018 until 2022. variable operationalization. The first is independent variable, economic growth, provincial minimum wage, and investment. And dependent variable is observation of labor, and the dummy variables is COVID-19 and non-COVID-19. Analysis technique. Analysis technique, the research used panel data regression analysis, which used to test the independent variable against the dependent variable using IFU's 9 software. Estimation method is common effect model, fixed effect model, and random effect model. And panel data regression model is Chow test, Hausman test, and Lagrange multiplier test. Research result. The first one is Chow test. The Chow test probability value obtained is smaller than 0.05. Namely, this mean is the rejected and accepted to the model used is the fixed effect model. And the second one is Hausman test. The Hausman test probability value obtained is greater than 0.05. This means that the model chosen in the research is the random effect model. And the last one is Lagrange multiplier test. The probability value of the Lagrange multiplier test seen from the branch-Pagan result is smaller than 0.05. This means that the better model to use in this research is the random effect model. Random effect model estimation result. Based on the result on the random effect estimation model above, it can be explained using the following regression equation. The equation above shows that economic growth has a positive significant effect on labor observation. The minimum wage variable has a negative and insignificant effect on labor observation. The investment variable have a negative and insignificant effect on labor observation, and the COVID-19 dummy variable has a negative and insignificant effect between the COVID-19 dummy or labor observation in DKI Jakarta. Partial test result. The first one is economic growth. The economic growth variable has a p-value of 0.00444 with a coefficient value of 0.011534. The result of this test show that H0 is rejected and hypothesis 1 is accepted, which means that there is a significant influence between economic growth and labor observation in DKI Jakarta. The second one is provincial minimum wage. The provincial minimum wage, there is an insignificant influence between the provincial minimum wage and labor observation in DKI Jakarta. Investment is the investment, which means that there is an investment influence between investment and labor observation in DKI Jakarta. And the last one is COVID-19. COVID-19 dummy variable has insignificant influence between the COVID-19 dummy on labor observation in DKI Jakarta. Simulation test result is the F statistic value show that variable economic growth, minimum wage, investment, and the COVID-19 dummy has a significant influence on labor observation in DKI Jakarta. And the coefficient determination test results show that 20% of the variation in the labor observation variable in DKI Jakarta is influenced by change in the variable in this research. The remaining 80% is influenced by other factors outside the research. Discussion of research result. The effect of economic growth on labor observation. Based on the result of the regression analysis in this study, it was found that economic growth has a significant value of 0.0044. So it was accepted, which means that economic growth had a significant effect on labor observation with a coefficient result This states that there is a positive influence between economic growth and labor observation. If economic growth increase, it will increase labor observation in DKI Jakarta. This research is in the line with research conducted by Sadihi and Rusniati. This research results show that economic growth has positive and statistically significant effect on labor observation. Economic growth has a positive and significant effect on labor observation, which show that if there is an increase in the GDP value in economic sector, they will increase the number of works available. The second is the effect of provincial minimum wage on labor observation. Based on the result of the regression analysis in this study, it was found that provincial minimum wage has a significant value, 0.3611. So it's a sector, which means the provincial minimum wage has no significant effect on labor observation. This indicates that there is negative insignificant influence between the provincial minimum and labor observation. If the minimum wage increases, it will reduce labor observation in DKI Jakarta. This research is in the line with research conducted by Alvin, Priyana, and Meilawati. This research explained that minimum wage has negative and insignificant effect of labor observation, meaning that for every 1% increase in minimum wage, labor observation will decrease by. The effect of investment on labor observation based on the result of the regression analysis in this study, it was found that investment has significant value of 0.6985. So it accepted, which means investment has no significant effect in labor observation with a coefficient of minus 0.025. This state that there is a negative influence between investment and labor observation. If increased investment will reduce labor observation in DKI Jakarta. This research is in the line with research conducted by Fadel, and if there is a negative and insignificant influence between investment and labor observation, every time there is a decrease in investment by 1%, it will reduce labor observation. According to him, investment has a negative effect because the investment made is more technology or capital intensive in the form of purchasing machine, which can help in a more effective and efficient production process so that it does not absorb too much labor. The effect of the COVID-19 dummy on labor observation. Based on the result of the regression analysis in the study, it was found that COVID-19 dummy has a significant value of 0.2812, so it was accepted, which means that the COVID-19 dummy did not have a significant effect on labor observation. It showed that there are negative influence between the COVID-19 dummy and labor observation. If the COVID-19 dummy increase, it will reduce labor observation in DKI Jakarta during the COVID-19 period. This research is in the line with research conducted by Suryadi. The research results show that COVID-19 pandemic has a negative effect on labor observation in Generation Z because it's not significant. This happened because the government has taken steps to optimize domestic potential. These steps including reducing interest rates, monitoring global and domestic economic development carried out by the government, which are considered appropriate so that influence remains under control. Conclusion and recommendation. Based on the research and data analysis, the author can draw the following conclusion. First is economic growth partially have a positive and significant effect on labor observation in DKI Jakarta. The research show that increasing economic growth will increase the observation. The provincial minimum wage partially has a negative and significant effect on labor observation in DKI Jakarta. The result of this test show that an increase in the minimum wage will reduce labor observation in DKI Jakarta. Investment partially has a negative and insignificant effect on labor observation in DKI Jakarta. The result of this test show that if the level of investment increase, it will reduce labor observation. The COVID-19 pandemic has a negative and insignificant influence on labor observation in DKI Jakarta, so that the number of workers absorbed before and during COVID-19 is different. The results show that an increase in the COVID-19 pandemic will reduce labor observation in DKI Jakarta. The result of the simultaneous significant test show that simultaneously there is a significant relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable with a coefficient of determination value. This means that 20% of the variation in the labor observation variable can be explained by variation in economic growth, minimum wage, investment, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, the remaining 80% is explained by variation in the variable outside this research. In the last is recommendation. DKI Jakarta government must pay more attention to policy related to the economic sector than can encourage an increase in gross regional domestic product. The government must also be able to see priorities and sectors that have the potential absorb works, so that the number of workers absorbed increase and the unemployment rate decreases. DKI Jakarta government must also monitor the minimum wage policy that has been set to the minimum wage set is truly in line with the needs of a declined life in DKI Jakarta. Of course, this can also create a balanced labor market so that number of employment works increase. DKI Jakarta government must continue to encourage increased investment that create job opportunity by creating a policy of easy business leasing so that investor will be interested in opening business in DKI Jakarta and employment will increase. After passing through the COVID-19 pandemic, the government and economic actors must rise together to continue expand employment opportunity through developing UMKM in DKI Jakarta so that higher labor observation can be achieved. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you for the attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.